Welcome to this episode of Digital Marketing Confessions. I'm your host, Steve Hooper, and in this podcast, I'll be asking the masterminds of digital marketing what they think is working and what isn't working in the world of digital right now. This week, I'm speaking with the amazing Dominic Cummins from Apex Agency Growth. Dominic is a fellow digital marketer certified partner and one of the most genuine folks I've had the fantastic opportunity to meet over the years. After a long time talking online, I met Dominic in London back in December last year, and I have to say it was a fairly shocking experience for one of us, but I will let Dom fill you in on that. Dom's a firm believer of not using short-term hacks, but to go for the long-term wins. And for a man who can boast having overseen deals of worth hundreds of millions of dollars, this one's well worth a listen. So my guest today, I am absolutely delighted to invite my friend, Dominic Cummins. And before anybody kicks off and starts thinking, oh my God, why would you have that moron on? It's not that Dominic Cummins. This is the guy that trolls the people that think he is that Dominic Cummins. My friend, my pal, my buddy, my confidant when it comes to all things digital marketing and business, Dominic Cummins from sunny California. 8:30 in the morning. I got the guy out of bed to come and do a podcast for me. Dom, welcome to Digital Marketing Confessions. Thank you very much indeed for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I think as soon as I started talking, everybody goes, yep, definitely not that guy. But I told you those stories. It's crazy. It's funny you brought that up because how many times that I don't use Twitter very often, but apparently they think I do. So I get tagged in a lot of tweets, and I'll usually wake up because of the time difference. I'll wake up and go, oh, what did he do this time? Because I'll be notifications like crazy on that one. Just what a funny coincidence that is.
Well, we have fun knowing that you're trolling the UK with the fact that nobody can work out the spelling difference between the two names. That's quite entertaining.
For sure.
Dom, tell us a little bit about Apex and what you do, and a little bit about your background.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the background actually kind of tells you how I got to the Apex part of it. So I'll start a little bit there. I came out of big corporate America. So I was in sales and marketing, closing big deals, primarily on the sales side. I ran marketing teams because, in corporate America, they're like, oh, you're the sales guy? Okay, well, you can run marketing too. So that's basically how I learned marketing that was sort of my other project I owned. But I was big into sales. Closed a lot of really big deals over the years. I've worked in the sort of that enterprise level space. So I've closed deals with like American Airlines, British Petroleum out your way, Qantas, a few other big companies, and worked in software and things like that. And so then at the software company that I was at, I had the opportunity we sold that company. We were able to exit from it. I helped build that up. And we sold for a little over $500 million. So it was a nice little exit. And so what I got the opportunity to do is at that point, I was actually going to go do another one, like launch right into another software company. My wife said, why don't you just do this for yourself? So I started a consulting business, but because of my marketing background, I kept getting roped in on the consulting side. I would help people with their messaging. I would help them with some things around sales. And then they'd be like, oh, but now our Facebook stinks, or now our whatever, all that stuff. And so I was like, oh, okay, well then I'll add that in. I know it. I'll build a team around me and we'll do that.
It's got a plug on it. That guy can do it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I started to put the team together. That was a business called Right Mind, which I had for a number of years. And then I realized that wasn't really my passion. I really enjoyed talking to people like you, talking to other agency owners. And because of having that big corporate background and also working in smaller businesses as well to help launch them, I had really good education on the executive side of things, like how to actually run the business. And I found that a lot of agency owners struggled with that. Brilliant marketers, trouble running the business. But how do you put together a P&L? How do you manage employees? How do you hire employees? And so out of that, eventually, to shorten the story, was bred Apex to actually provide coaching and help mostly through a mastermind. And then we also have a group coaching product to help agency owners. We actually have a term for it. I will not tell you the whole acronym because I'm not sure of the parental rating on your show, but we use the term RBS, and it stands for Real Business Something. We don't use something. And that's really what we talk about, is all that stuff, all the stuff that nobody wants to talk about, all the stuff that's difficult, the things that really plague you as a business owner. And so that's what Apex is all about, fixing the RBS.
Absolutely. And I'm pleased to tell you that my daughter still walks around in the t-shirt with RBS on it, and she hasn't got a clue what it stands for.
I love that. I mean, I probably should feel bad about that, but I love it at the same time.
I'm going to tell the story about the first time we met, because we'd been chatting online for quite a while, and you came over to the UK to do a coaching session, which myself and former guest Nick Hill attended. And we turned up in the morning to this rather dazed looking gentleman that was trying to plug his camera equipment in. And it turns out it was quite a shocking experience for you, wasn't it?
Yes, that's putting it mildly. So apparently they were having a little trouble with their electrical system. So when I plugged in my equipment, which is all, pretty good equipment, I do this a lot. It made quite the spark. It actually so much so that it shut the fire doors to the rest of the building automatically and shut off power to a good portion of the room. So it was quite literally a shocking experience and it hurt a little bit, I'll be honest, as well. So.
But I've got to say, like the true champion that he is, Dom then went on and delivered an 8-hour training session and came to the pub afterwards. And the video that I saw around about 11 o'clock at night, he was returning to his hotel after delivering all of that, going to the pub, meeting up with Mike afterwards. And it was just like, oh my God, this guy's a legend. But the story goes on because you went to see your doctor a week or so later.
Yeah.
Only to find out more.
I had a scheduled appointment. It was nothing major. And so I was just see him, and he's a friend. And so we were chatting, and I said, oh, it's fun. So he's actually originally from India. And so we were chatting about me being in the UK, as family there and such. And so we got chatting. I was like, yeah, it's a crazy experience. I got shocked pretty bad there. And he goes, shocked. He goes, that's, obviously your power is a little different than ours, quite a bit more robust than ours is here in the US. And so, and I said, yeah. And I don't mean to sound like I'm complaining, but crazy enough, my shoulder still hurts. I think it was about 2 weeks later. I said, it still aches a little bit. And he goes, well, let me see real quick, roll up your sleeve. So I rolled up my sleeve, and sure enough, he found there was a burn mark on my shoulder where it actually had not just shocked me. It had actually truly electrocuted me, gone up through. And he said, because I was sitting close to the little heater, the radiator that was on the ground, it went out arced out that, hit the metal there and discharged. But that, which is probably the bang that you guys heard, was that happening. But it actually went through it. He said, you're actually pretty lucky you weren't holding on to something with the other hand with some metal. He said, it wouldn't have necessarily killed you, but you would have felt it a lot more if it had gone through your heart. So yeah, it was quite the experience.
Yeah, just a bit. Welcome to the UK.
Yes, I love it there. That was good times.
Absolutely. But as I say, you went through the day. We went to the pub afterwards. So yes. I could, and it was a good session as well. It was a really good session. So, Dom, one of the things that we set the podcast up for was a lot of business owners that I've been speaking to, especially over the last couple of months, with the wonders of what's been happening in the world with the lockdown and everything coming to a stop. People are frustrated with doing things that aren't working and doing lots of stuff that they're not sure whether or not it's working. So the whole reason that I set this podcast up was to ask the masterminds that I know are implementing this stuff on a daily basis 2 questions. The first question is, what isn't working in the world of digital marketing right now, in your opinion?
Sure. So I'll take this for a little, maybe a little higher level from that of what's not working, and what I'll go back to right when COVID started, when we fully became aware of COVID. How about that? Right after the quarantine was initiated in both of our countries, I had the opportunity to host a virtual summit, and I had 20, I think 8 speakers on there. And one of them was a gentleman that I think you're familiar with, Mike Arcee, who runs a very large agency that specializes in fitness studios. And obviously fitness studios, one of the harder hit throughout this quarantine situation. And he made a great comment to me during his interview where he said, for the last few years, we've been bowling with the bumpers up. And so the reference there, if you're not a bowler, if folks aren't a bowler, is that if you go rolling, towards rolling the heavy ball towards the pins, for the kids, you usually pop up these little bumpers that keeps the ball from going out of the gutter.
Not just
and his
the kids.
point was not just the kids. Yes, sometimes others, your friend who's had a few too many pints, other situations. But you have the keeps it out of the gutters. And what his point was, he said, essentially for the last few years, because the economy's gone pretty well, you could basically throw anything down there and it'd eventually go down there and probably hit a pin. And the more that I contemplate that, and the longer that this situation goes on, the more that we're seeing that. And where it starts to manifest itself was all the little hacks that people were trying. All the little, in fact, one of the website URLs I use is nogrowthhacks.com. So I'm not a big fan of growth hacks, period. But there is this idea of like, oh, well, here's the new hot thing to try, or, oh, this is working, we should try that, or we that, do this. And while there could be some merit to those things, many of them ignore traditional, fundamental, timeless principles of marketing or running a business or sales, and capitalize on some little bit of momentum that something has. And not to jump on the TikTok bandwagon, but everybody was talking about that. Oh, you got to do TikTok advertising, or you got to have a LinkedIn approach that looks like this, or you got to whatever. But many of those ignored just what actual buyer behavior was. And so what we started to see with COVID, when people started to tighten the belts in most industries, obviously e-commerce is kind of another animal unto itself, right? But if you're outside of that, what you start to see is people making they're making methodical decisions. They're really thinking things through. And the way has always been to get around that is through just timeless principles, things that make sense, things that to the average person go, oh, I see the logic of that, I'll move forward. And so the what's not working is basically being any of these little like growth hacky kind of things we tried for so many years. And those worked, and sometimes do work for a little bit, get a deal here or there. For some, it's big enough to build a business off of. The analogy I think of is whenever there's a real estate boom, think of how many people go get their real estate licenses, right? It's everybody. Like everybody all of a sudden is a real estate agent, and you're like, where did that come from? When the market starts to turn on them, though, they're often the ones who are in the most trouble because they made a lot of money, bought a lot of stuff, have a lot of debt, and are now out of it because they can't sell a house, they can't move it. The folks that have been the real estate agents the entire time, that never stopped advertising, that just were steady Eddie, that just kept going, tend to bank that money because they know it's an ebb and flow. They put it away, they run a smart business, and then they weather the storm, and they're still there 10 years later. And that's where I look at digital marketers. We tend to, and I include myself in this class, we get excited about something, and then all of a sudden we become, it's the hot new thing du jour. We chase it, we run, we make some money, we get excited, but then it doesn't, we ignore the timeless principles that should have been there all along.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I very much feel where you're coming from. And as you say, the huge thing when we first went into lockdown was e-commerce just went kaboom, because that was huge. But we see it an awful lot, and I've been on some calls recently with people that have, the whole thing about pivot. If I heard that word one more and saw the Friends gif of pivot one more time, yes, I was going to scream. But there's lots of companies out there that just literally couldn't. And gyms was a huge thing. The travel industry, we've got some good friends in the travel industry with regards to the business, and sitting on a call with them and hearing them go, look, I just need to know what to do. What do I do? Because I don't know. And this is somebody with 25 years experience in the industry, and it's like, how can I come up with something for you? Because, and, then you start thinking, well, yeah, how can we move this? What can we do to help you with this? And I think the whole fad thing and the as you say, the hack, because everybody's looking for the next shiny object, as Brian would put it. But yeah, the big thing is to make sure that if you are chasing a shiny object, it becomes part of the bigger picture. Because if you're not including it in that big picture, then it's literally just that. It's something that will make you a couple of bucks, and then you're screwed.
Well, I
And
use an, sorry, go ahead.
no, go
I,
on.
I'll use an analogy for that often too, and I prefer the term. Not I hear Ryan talks about shiny object syndrome. Of course, he's not the only one, so I'm not picking on him
No.
when he says this. I like the term. I've replaced that term in my vocabulary with profit killing distraction rather than shiny object syndrome, because
Yeah.
shiny object syndrome makes it sound like it's cute and it'll work. It might for a minute, but likely in long term it will kill your profits. And the analogy I use for that is thinking of train tracks. Running a business is like running a train. It momentum is key, and then good news is it's hard to sometimes slow it down when there's good momentum. That's actually a good thing for a business. But what you rarely see, actually I've never seen on a train track, is a right turn.
Yep.
Or left turn. They're very gradual. They make turns. They go through mountains and they make sweeping turns. But it's not like they just, oh, we're going to go that direction now. So thinking in terms of a business, you do want to stay on the rails. You want to, if they did make a right turn, they'd go off the rails. And often the business does go off the rails when it does. Now, that's not to say that you won't make adjustments, but that's not a pivot to me. And I agree with you. It's super annoying how that term is being used. It's really not a pivot, because if you think of pivot, you really are changing direction.
Yeah.
It's usually looking for adjacencies. What is something that's close to that current industry or adjacent to it? And then that way, I picture that like siding for a railway. They come off the tracks periodically to get service, to maintain, but if you notice, it's still heading the same direction as they always were.
Yep.
But they'll come off the track a little bit to do something, and sometimes we'll come off the track just a little bit to service the business, to look at something, go, is this making sense? Maybe I'll try it. Okay, it's not, or yes, it is, and then that dictates where we go from there. But I find that using that train analogy is helpful. Am I still on the tracks, or am I trying to make too sharp of a turn for my business? Because that's a profit killing distraction.
Absolutely. And that sums it up brilliantly. The train on the tracks. And I have to say, it's not the first time I've heard you use that analogy, because it works so well, especially, explaining to people, like, you want this, then it's fine, but you've got to keep going in that direction. And that's a huge thing. So I think that covers the what's not working. So the big question, considering what you've just said and taking that on board, what is the one thing that is working? And I'm going to change this slightly for you because of what you just said. What's the one thing that is working right now that people can implement in their strategies to gain a long-term goal?
Well, you almost said it the way I would say it. Is the answer to that is the phrase that I've been using, and I'll admit I'm not a copywriter, so this could use a little cleaning up, and I'm open if your audience has a fancier way of saying it. Solve the short term to earn the right to go long term. And so let me explain what I mean by that. Is we oftentimes, as agency owners, our ultimate goal, and you were actually at that workshop, I had Brian Plum, good friend of both of ours, who came in and trained around his hierarchy of desire and this concept. We always want the retainer or some form of consistent income from a client, but that's not necessarily what they want to give right off the bat. And so we're at an immediate disparity from what they're doing. And the way to close that gap is through creating trust. To create trust with a business owner typically involves actually proving that you can do it. And so what I see a lot of agency owners do is, oh, well, we'll get into something and all you have to do is commit to 3 months of working with me and I'll get this thing done for you. And oftentimes we use these great terms about how we're going to double or triple their business in 90 days. And most business owners know that's not realistic. And so we turn into this thing where and so then they're looking at us like, I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if I want to be married to you for 3 months, much less a year-long retainer. And so where we've been encouraging our members to do, and has actually had a tremendous amount, is utilizing strategy sessions, as has been one that works a lot for a lot of people, is to, some form of maybe an intro call, and then you jump them into a paid strategy session, is making the goal not coming out of that strategy session like you've heard me speak on, turning that strategy session right into a retainer model, but rather turning that strategy session into what can I solve for you in the next 30 days? In fact, I challenge my members to use the phrase with their clients is to say, what's your biggest business challenge right now as it pertains to your marketing and sales? Or you can leave that last bit off, actually, because most big business challenges have to do with money. Let me solve that for 30 days, and then we'll sort it out. And you make the goal of the strategy session to identify what that is and solve it. And so for most people right now, I'll be honest, I don't think most businesses, again, exception maybe some e-commerce business and others, aren't looking at their next 90 days. They're trying to figure out how to survive this week and next week. This has gone on far longer than I think most of us thought it would. There are still many businesses that are closed. There are still a number of things that are challenging businesses here. So solve for them what they're going to think of in the next 30 days, their big business challenge. If it's revenue, as marketers, I mean, you could run a great win-back campaign and possibly generate revenue right off the bat. That earns the trust. Now, people will talk about give them, what's the phrase? Something of like value in advance, and that's good, but they need even more tangible things than that. And so I love these 30-day sprints, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of success because the strategy session isn't like, okay, because the client's going to think, like, if I have you in for a strategy session, you're going to try to get me into a long-term agreement. I'm just not ready for that. Change that dynamic. We're going to have a strategy session. I'm going to figure out what's the biggest business challenge I can solve for you in 30 days. And then coming out of that strategy, if you want to move forward, then we'll price that out that 30 days. Now that leads to the term, what I said, solve the short term to earn the right to the long term. If you solve one of their big business challenges in 30 days, you're hard pressed to think you won't get the business.
Absolutely.
And it's in the time frame your customer's thinking of. And we as marketers always want to enter the conversation that they're having in their head. Their conversation right now isn't 90 days. It's not 180 days. It's not a year from now. It is, for most business owners, small to medium-sized business owners, it is, what are we doing right now?
Yep. Absolutely spot on. And as I used the travel industry as an example when we were speaking before, and I think that's one of the big things is that, they're literally at the moment screwed, and that's the nicest possible way I can put it, because nobody can travel. And even when they do, they're at the risk of, when you get back, you're going to have to quarantine.
Yep. Sorry, my lights went off there. I apologize. Me and electricity don't get along, apparently.
I was expecting sparks to shoot out your fingers.
Yes, right out of my shoulders.
So, when it comes to that sort of thing, I sat in on a what we call a group acceleration call on Friday morning, and one of the people from the travel industry was there, and really, really nice lady. Totally looking, what can I do at the moment? What can I do? And, we're sort of saying to her, look, virtual reality, but that's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to turn the travel industry into something that people just stick a pair of goggles on and they can experience a beach and stuff like that. Yeah, all right, getting family members to throw buckets of water over them so they can feel like they're on the waves and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's not going to work in the same way. So, the initial idea was, there's people in old people in homes. There's people in hospital that can't have those experiences and don't necessarily want to put the goggles on. So why not, get something on the iPad that's a 360-degree thing on the iPad that they can literally have a look and they can have some of that experience without having to go anywhere, without having to put the goggles on and all the rest of it. And she's got funding. There's funding because there's technical funding available for her. So that allows her to start moving her business forward. But again, that's it, solving something short term, because long term, she's going to need something else and then something else and then something else. So with regards to the short term, there's a lot of businesses out there at the moment who are just banging their heads against a brick wall. And, from our point of view, from a marketing point of view, it's quite easy to go in and say, in the next 30 days, we can do this for you. Give us a budget and, we can make magic happen, we stuff like that, because you can normally, from an outsider's point of view, you can see a hole. And you can turn around and say, okay, well, we can plug that hole. And as Brian rightly pointed out, you have to have your return paths and stuff like that, because if somebody's not buying into it, then they're not ready. Let's just keep them at the level that they're ready for, and then introduce more and more as they're ready for it. And I think that's one of the big problems with companies that I've come across that are selling services at the moment. They all want the big sale.
Yep.
They all want to, they all want to jump on board, and they all want to do anything and everything that they can to just get the money in the bank. And I think the core message that, those that I know in marketing are always putting out is, don't just build a sale, build a customer and a friend that will come back to you for a very long time to come. And I think that message at the moment is getting a little bit lost. And as you rightly said, use that small pocket of time, use 30 days, fix something in 30 days, or even a week. Crikey, there's things out there that can be fixed really quick, but fix them quickly, let them see the advantage of that quick fix, and then fix the next bit. And then that way you're building up that relationship that's going to have that benefit of, when we do come out of this crazy time, which we will, this will pass, as everything has before it. When we do come out of it, there will be something there, and those people will remember you. Very much like yourself, when this all started, we ran a virtual conference, if you like, and we had, because we were aware that people were going to be working at home, and there were people who were institutionalized that just didn't know what working at home was. So we did a one-day conference where we had a fitness expert come on and talk about the importance of stretching and getting up and moving around. We had a setback coach that spoke about, look, this is going to set you back a little bit, but we'll move you forward. Leadership coach, how to talk to teams and things like that. And even now, people come to me and say, that really helped me.
Right.
Because during that small time period, we were able to solve a few problems. We had a hypnotherapist, and I'm not sure whether he plugged something in their heads that made them think that, or we actually did, but I'm pretty sure we did plug a few gaps. But as you rightfully said, that small period of time, rather than going for the long win straight away, work on the small win, and those small wins will all come back and pay you. I think that's the message that I definitely got from that. And
it is. And I think there's another, when you think about the timeless principle, though, is put the customer first. And when we start worrying about what our next paycheck is, and look, I'm a business owner too. It's not like COVID has been rosy for us, though I will confess we've done pretty well through it. But the initial bit of it was, I was as scared as could be. And so that initial feeling is that scarcity mindset. Oh, I got to close the deal. I better get money, and I got to fire this person. I got to get rid of this thing, and I got to do this, and I'm not going to pay for any other membership thing or anything else, because I've got to dial back. I got to focus in on this. And that's your natural inclination. But we as entrepreneurs don't win from a place of scarcity. We win when we have an abundance mindset. And then that subtle shift to, okay, so what can I do for my customers? What do they need right now that I could fulfill for them? And when you put it that way, like you said, you realize there was a small window there to educate some people, so you did it. Now it would be too late. So you took advantage of that point. Probably stressful to put it together that quickly, right? I know ours thing, we put it 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks to the day from when we went on official lockdown. We launched the virtual summit. It didn't launch it. We had it 2 weeks to the day. But we capitalized on that window, but it was all about them. I had no thought that I would make any money off of that summit whatsoever, though we've added members from it. there was no thought to this 30 days. You're not thinking in terms of like, what can I make? Because you're probably not going to make a big amount of money in 30 days. So it becomes all about the customer. And that's when I mentioned at the beginning and the outset is timeless principles will always work. And a timeless principle is put your freaking client first. That's like, that is, and it's so hard to do, but when you do, they know it and they feel it. Yeah. And that's what you say. They remember that. And long after this is over, the dividends, the effort that you've put in today are going to pay off. Very similar to probably with the same message we're telling to our clients, even your travel, people, like, keep communicating to your clients, keep showing them cool things, try new things, try VR, because when this lifts, everybody's going to want to travel.
Yep.
Because we've been held up for travel. So I can't wait to get on the road and travel. They're going to need you, but they're not going to remember you if you haven't been communicating with them and putting them first this entire time. And is that hard to do? Does that always generate money? No, it's definitely hard. It doesn't always generate money, but it will pay off in the long term because you put the customer first. You'll always win in that scenario.
Brilliant. Dominic Cummins, what can I say? The genius that is, thank you so much for coming on. I personally love talking to you. You know that I could fire up one of these every morning and I could just chat to you every single day. But I truly believe that, there's great value there. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today. And I look forward to the time that we can do this in person and get you on for another episode. And we'll definitely do that from a pub with a beer.
For sure.
And I promise candles and firelight. And the only thing that will be on will be a camera. And it won't even be plugged in.
That just got weird, Steve. I'm sure we'll do it. Now, I think last we talked, I was supposed to come back, I think in April, and then we were going to go to a football game, and just, life has not turned out like we hope. So we'll get on that.
They won't
soon.
even let us into football matches anymore.
I know. They just announced for American football. I have season tickets to the stadium right up the street here, and they just literally sent the email yesterday. They're going to go with no fans this year. So there you go. It's same here. So who knows? What are you going to do?
Well, we're currently off season at the moment, so everything's shut. But we've got a top rate team just up the road. And they're constantly sending out emails saying, "Hey, look, we can't have anybody in the stadium until, so that's a bit disappointing." But I do know that it's only around the corner, my friend. So I look forward to it. Thank you, Dominic Cummins.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Always good chatting with you.